Trainspotting is directed by Danny Boyle, written by John Hodge. It's based on the novel by Irvine Welsh and stars Ewan McGregor, Ewan Bremner, Johnny Lee Miller, Robert Carlyle, and Kevin McKidd. And Trainspotting centers on the character of Mark Renton, played by Ewan McGregor, who is a heroin addict living in Edinburgh with his other lowlife and junkie friends. And the film just kind of looks at how they struggle to make ends meet. Now, I am reviewing Trainspotting because its sequel, T2 Trainspotting, came out a while back. But I'm really just excited to have the opportunity to finally talk about Trainspotting because this movie is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is an incredible audiovisual experience. It has legendary performances from a pitch-perfect cast, and it's directed with more enthusiasm and energy than I think most directors have in their entire filmographies. Now for me, I think the key to Trainspotting is its characters. The characters here walk a very delicate balance between being both difficult to root for and irresistibly endearing and sympathetic at the same time. And I think this is so important because this movie really aims to show these characters as human beings. So they are very complex. The relationships among these characters are dynamic and just as complex. And Trainspotting is, I think, one of the best examples of a movie that uses narration well. This entire movie is narrated by Renton, but he's not just explaining what's going on screen. Instead, he, through his narration, really kind of colors everything from his perspective. And what happens is that we kind of get a biased view of events because we're seeing it from Renton's perspective, and it ends up, forcing us to reconsider how we feel about some other characters and about some events and about Renton himself. And what's cool about the plot in Trainspotting is that it does follow the book kind of faithfully. I haven't read the book, but from what I know, the book is pretty much a collection of short stories. And for most of the running time, I think, in Trainspotting, it comes off as a series of vignettes. However, these vignettes have real consequences. When bad things happen in Trainspotting, they stay forever and you feel the repercussions all throughout the film. This is a movie that can get really dark and really sad, but at the same time, it's hilarious all the way through. I still laugh so much to this day, like from just so many scenes in Trainspotting. And more than that, I think it's an important film. This is a movie that really aims to make you empathize with these drug addicts, and I think it really works, and we need that today, especially if you live in the Philippines. Now, none of this would work if it wasn't for the cast in this movie. They are just all incredible and perfect for these roles. First of all, Ewan McGregor gives the performance of a lifetime here as Renton. This is still to this day the best performance he's ever given, which is not to discredit, everything else he's done up to today, but this performance is really, really something. He's so scarily convincing as this heroin addict. He really conveys the pain and boredom that comes with being addicted to a drug. But at the same time, he has a lot of full wisdom and sarcasm in his personality. And what he does through his acting and through his narration is that he keeps you on his side for the most part. You believe what he says, but at the same time, you always have a little bit of doubt about what he's saying, and I think that's really difficult for an actor to pull off. Ewan Bremner plays Spud, and he is brilliant. He is really sympathetic, and I think he's the heart and soul of the gang here. He also played Renton on stage, I believe, so he's a really versatile actor. Johnny Lee Miller, who most people might know from Elementary, has a lot of mischief about him as he plays Sick Boy because he's this con artist, but there's also one moment of just crushing vulnerability with Sick Boy that really, really got to me. We've got Kevin McKidd as Tommy, and I will not say that much about Tommy because his arc is one of my favorite parts of Trainspotting. I'll just say that he is extremely affecting. And then you've got Robert Carlyle as Begbie, who just goes absolutely ballistic in this role because Begbie is a psychopath and he's really funny, but at the same time he is really, really scary to be around, and I think he plays it extremely well. The rest of the cast is great, but I also just want to highlight Kelly MacDonald, who plays Diane, who is a girl that Renton meets, and she is feisty in her own little way. And none of this would work at all if not for Danny Boyle. The best way to describe how he directs Trainspotting is to call it punk. This is punk direction, the textbook definition of it. On the surface, it seems like there's no discipline or commitment to a single style or a single method of storytelling, but it becomes clear early on that every stylistic choice that Danny Boyle makes, he does it for very precise reasons. I think the way he directs this film really reflects how the characters' lives are unpredictable. You know, they can go from being wildly exciting to desperate and tragic. And he does some things, formally speaking, here that end up never being distracting because they perfectly match each tone that he's going for in every scene. It's just a perfectly balanced dark comedy. The editing here from Masahiro Hirakubo really contributes a lot to the energy that you see on screen. I think the best thing they pull off is that the first half or so is really manic in terms of it moves very quickly from one scenario to another, but when really bad things start to happen about halfway through the movie, the film slows down. And at first I didn't like how the film slowed down, but I thought about it and it makes a really good point. Through it slowing down, you really understand just how boring life can get for these addicts, especially when they're off the heroin. Again, this movie makes you understand more than any other film what it feels like to be a drug addict. And of course, this movie kicks off with a now iconic montage that is so brilliantly edited, featuring the whole choose life speech. It's great stuff. Now, you wouldn't expect a punk film to have really glossy cinematography, and it really doesn't. But the cinematography here, Brian Tufano and the production design team, they use the poverty-stricken slums of Edinburgh to terrific effect. You just feel dirty watching this movie. It really reflects the lifestyle of the characters. And there's some visual tricks that go on in this movie that must have been jaw-dropping for 1996 and they still hold up here. There's a scene where a character overdoses, and the way they represent that visually, you really just feel helpless about it. There's that surreal worst toilet in Scotland scene, which is hilarious to this day. And then there's the detox scene, which is genuinely scary and unnerving, and it's just a miracle to watch unfold. It's also really, really well edited. But of course, we can't talk about Trainspotting without talking about the soundtrack to this movie. Danny Boyle uses music better than I think most directors. The soundtrack to this film is so great because these songs sound exactly like what the characters themselves might be listening to. You know, the songs don't just highlight emotions that you see on screen. Sometimes they bring out emotions that you wouldn't be able to identify without the music. You've got Iggy Pop's Lust for Life, which will forever be associated with the opening scene, the whole choose life thing. The detox scene has Underworld's Dark and Long playing over it, and it really, really helps with the effect of that scene. And of course, the ending of this movie has the song Born Slippy Knocks, also by Underworld, which again, for some reason is really moving, but it's an EDM song, so I don't know how they pull that off. If there's any flaw I have with Trainspotting, it's that I think it's a little bit too short. I wanted a bit more from the third act, maybe to show how some characters are adjusting to different circumstances in their lives, but that's really it. Trainspotting is an amazing film that I would recommend to absolutely everybody. If you have not seen Trainspotting yet, you owe it to yourself, if you love movies, to watch this movie as soon as possible. I think it is the best film about drug addiction ever made because it treats the subjects like human beings and forces you to really identify with them, and I think that is a great achievement. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Trainspotting. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Whatever you guys think about it, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.